Hey guys, Fi here with my top 5 supports for 3.15. Now, the support role has drastically changed in the preseason and bot lane is now at least 50-50, meaning that the job supports do is much more important. Now first up we have Sona. So Sona has always been a good support to play as she has a high impact ultimate and is super noob friendly. I don't really mean noob friendly as in she's really easy to play because she's pretty squishy and you can die really quickly if you miss position. Her heal means that your AD doesn't have to worry about trading badly as you can just heal him up again, so she's great at nursing a bad AD player through the lane phase. Now it's also just one side of playing her. If you want to go more aggressive you can max your Q and actually control the lane yourself. So Sona's kit is really well rounded, but the rise of other tanky high damage supports has meant that Sona has become a slightly risky pick. She's risky because if she steps in range of their CC she's probably going to die straight away, and it means that there is a lot less room for mistakes when you're playing her. I put some viable item choices on screen now, but I'm going to highlight the one item I think synergizes especially well. Now in this case Crucible is really good for Sona. Not only does it solve her mana issues with the Chalice, but it also gives you an extra form of protection, as in team fights you only really have your ultimate to peel with. Now I've put Thresh, Leona and Annie as counters here, as if Sona gets in range of their CC she's going to blow up incredibly quickly. So when you're laning as Sona you want to focus on either healing or poking, and which of these you do really depends on the lane itself. Now against someone like Caitlyn who is heavy poke, then you're probably going to want to max your heals so that you give your AD a free lane. Against someone like Vayne though, who is pretty weak in lane, you're probably going to want to max your Q and poke her out of lane. Now the way these abilities scale with ranks mean that early on they pretty much do nothing, so choosing the right one will affect how you have to play the lane. Now it's also pretty important to pay attention to cooldowns because you as Sona will most likely be the target of any aggression. For example, if Thresh has his hook up, he's probably going to aim it at you, so you have to make sure you aren't in range, and when it's on cooldown you can move into poke. Finally, in team fights you have the potential to have a huge impact with your ultimate. Try to hit the enemy carries with a flash ult, or alternatively you can use it on the enemy divers to give your carries some breathing room. Now when you're playing as Sona you'll pretty much never win the poke war, so you need to aim to kill one of them rather than kind of trade. As I said before, Sona is very weak and she is one of the only supports that you can kill almost instantly before the enemy AD has a chance to react. Now after level 6 though, don't underestimate how strong her ultimate really is, and remember that if you're basic attacking her then you're in range of being hit by it, which is not good. So next up we have Karma, and this may be a surprise to some of you, but it's not going to be if you watch the competitive scene in Korea. Now Karma is actually really strong. She has great poke, great utility, and AoE heal, and is actually pretty hard to kill too. The reason she isn't higher on this list is because she's a very aggressive support and she isn't great at getting someone away from your AD if they're already on top of them. Now her poke early can literally win you the lane by itself. It's extremely strong, and using her ultimate to empower your Q can easily take off 30% of the enemy AD's health, which is crazy. When you combine this kind of poke with a root and a shield, it becomes really hard to avoid fighting her, and if you aren't stronger then you are going to get zoned. Mid game she doesn't really have a big impact ultimate, but she can speed a whole team up, and when combined with the new Shirelia's item it's a really good way of engaging a fight. This is why I've chosen to highlight this item for Karma. It makes it literally impossible to get away from her, but you can also use it to disengage with your AoE speed up too. This ability to choose exactly when you want to fight is really effective in solo queue. Now for counters here I put people who have multiple forms of CC, as they can lock up Karma's target and outlast the speed by forcing them to fight. When you're laning as Karma you want to poke as much as possible, as that is your biggest strength. The best way of hitting it is to stand off to the side of the wave and then aim it at minions next to where the enemy AD is going to come and CS. As the Q is AoE, it's a really easy way of guaranteeing a hit, but it will also push the lane. Using your ultimate properly is also really important, so make sure you read the tooltips and know exactly what they do. While using your ultimate and Q will do a ton of damage, it may not be the best option every time. Now another tip is that when the enemy laners do engage, using your tether on them will often force them to turn away and break it, giving your AD a little bit more time to run away. Playing against Karma is a lot like playing against Sona in that you really want to hard engage and not let her poke you. Karma does have a lot of ways to survive and not many ways to peel, which means that it's normally always the better option to focus on the enemy AD rather than her. And the main difficulty with playing against Karma is that you can put her on low health from a trade, but she's still going to fire Qs out to poke you down, so you really have to try and kill her or force her out of lane to shut her down. It's also important to play the cooldown game against her. Her cooldowns are pretty long, and so once she's used her rotation she's extremely vulnerable, especially when she has no ultimate. Long range ADs are actually really good against Karma because when you go aggressive you won't be eating those Qs straight to the face. Trading with a short range AD like Vayne will mean that as soon as you try to basic attack her, she's going to hit you with that Q straight away and then run away. So taking the third spot on this list is Thresh. Now Thresh is always going to be really strong because he has so much utility in his kit. He has pretty good poke, a knockback, an AoE slow, a hook, a shield and that freaking lantern too. Now with all these mechanics in one kit, it means that he can pretty much fulfill any role, whether that's protection, diving or initiating. Now the reason he is only at number 3 on this list is because the 2 above him can beat him and shut him down in lane, but these 3 are all really close. Now Thresh is probably the number 1 playmaker support as there are so many creative ways to enable ganks and kills in lane. His lantern is a completely unique mechanic and is responsible for a lot of this creativity that I'm talking about. So just a few examples: he can engage bot lane and lantern his jungle in from behind, making ganks really easy. Even more creative, he can hook someone over a wall, go over on that hook and bring someone with him on the lantern. Now this kind of catch potential is something that can snowball games, and I honestly think that he is the highest skill cap ceiling out of any support. Now what I mean by this is that he's not really that hard to play to start with, but there is a lot of room to improve with him and become incredible, much like Mad Life has proven in OGN. There are 2 ways you can really play and build him, either as a diver or a peeler. Now if you want to dive, then items like Sunfire are really strong, and if you want to peel or initiate, then Crucible and Shurelya's are really good. For counters I've listed Leona and Annie, and this is literally because all 3 have really good CC, but Leona and Annie will do more damage and just have a natural advantage in lane. So when you're playing as Thresh, you really want to be constantly asking yourself, can I hook someone now? Now the easiest way to lose a lane on a Thresh is to engage after missing your hook. That hook gives you quite a lot of CC time, and missing it is just kind of asking for trouble. A top tip with the hook is to let it tug twice before going to the target. Now this is going to maximise the time crowd controlled, and it's just giving your AD a bit more extra time to follow up. Thresh is also one of the only supports I start a sweeper lens on, and this is because it's really hard to dodge things you can't see. Getting a hook early will get you complete control of the lane, and if you have brush control, this is a lot easier to do. Now in team fights you really need to decide how you're going to play it, and it's best to have a general idea before you engage so you can react quicker. If you're going to dive onto the enemy team, then it's best to flash box, then either carries back into your team. This is going to greatly reduce their damage output as they'll have to run away, but it will leave your carries alone. Now if you decide to peel, then you'll use your box surrounding your carries and try to either divers onto another wall for a double slow. When you add in the shield from your lantern and the hook CC, it's really hard to get through Thresh onto any carry. So taking the silver medal, we have Leona. Now Leona pretty much sums up what the meta is for supports right now, and it's sad that I can't put her at number 1, but I'm going to explain that a bit more in a sec. So she's naturally tanky as hell with her W, she has 2 forms of CC and a gap closer, and does a freaking ton of damage with her passive. Now supports get more gold right now, and defense is pretty cheap, which means that if she gets ahead, she's going to become so tanky that there's no way you can kill her, and she's pretty much like another laner in this sense. The scary thing is that it's not really that hard to get ahead as Leona because of the combination of her damage and crowd control. Now one drawback with Leona is that if you do get behind, then you're pretty much useless. You have to dive into people to get your CC off, and the chances are that if you're behind, they're just going to turn around and kill you. This kind of leads on to the other problem in that if you're passive in lane, then you're just accepting you're going to lose the lane, and so you have to be aggressive to win. Now when you put together how much damage she does, how tanky she is, and how aggressive she can be, then she definitely deserves her spot. Build wise, I'd argue that Sunfire is core on her. Now this is because not only does it give you health to deal with generic damage, but it also gives you armor and a bit of damage too, making it really hard for the enemy AD to kill you. Janna and Annie are only really counters if they're played correctly, so it's more of a skill matchup, but it does give you the potential to win your lane. Now when you're playing as Leona, you want to focus on going aggressive whenever you get the opportunity, but make sure your AD can follow up. If you dive past their support to get to their AD, then chances are your AD will have to attack their support first, and that split focus isn't going to do anyone any favours. That's pretty much your job in lane. Look for good fights and take them. When you hit level 6, this gets a lot easier because you can ultimate from range to start the fight and then E onto them when they're slowed or stunned. Now in team fights, your job is really to dive onto the enemy team and land a good ultimate. Leona isn't really that good at peeling for your carries as you only have your Q, and using your ultimate on a diver is a bit of a waste. Your ultimate is also an amazing initiation tool, and if you see someone out of position, don't be afraid to use it. When you're laning against Leona though, there are a few things to keep in mind. So firstly, if you survive the first rotation with the stun, then you're probably going to win the fight. Leona has to dive into you to do damage and then walk away afterwards, and when she's walking away she's extremely vulnerable. Poking her as she runs away also means that she'll be less likely to do it again on low health, but if she does you can probably kill her. Now this same theory also applies if you're playing a support. You can use your CC on the enemy AD to prevent the follow-up, because Leona only has her first rotation, which she's already used to get onto your AD, so she isn't really the threat. Even better than punishing her when she jumps in is just saving your gap closer or escape for when she uses her E and dodge it. Now when she has no E, she has no way of getting on top of you, so you can poke her for a good 10 seconds while it's on cooldown. So at number 1, obviously we have Annie. Now it makes me quite sad putting Annie at number 1 because I don't think her kit is as strong as other supports, but she just does way too much damage to not put her here. Now apart from her damage, she does also have a stun, a bit of extra tankiness with her E, and her high impact ultimate, meaning that she can pretty much carry a team by herself right now. Her snowball potential is one of the biggest reasons why she is so strong. Now if she gets ahead and buys some damage, then she can pretty much solo the enemy AD, which is really not good. When you do take that damage she's bought early, a stun and an AoE ultimate, you can demolish teamfights and have a huge impact. This kind of high impact is the reason why she's pick or ban right now, because if you're good with her, you can carry your team by yourself. Now item wise, there are so many choices, so I'm actually not going to put anything here. You could seriously build an AP or support item and do well with her. You can build her tanky with her base damage and stun, or you can go glass cannon just for damage, and both work really well. Counters wise, Leona, Lulu and Karma are the best matchups to go against her. Now Leona can engage onto Annie and kill her and will survive her rotation, whereas Lulu and Karma will be able to survive her first rotation and escape. Now when you're playing against Annie, you want to be looking to fight as much as possible, and there are a few things to consider as well. So firstly, and I'm not even joking, you should ask yourself, can you kill them yourself? Chances are if they are 50% health and you have your ultimate, then the answer is sadly yes. Secondly, can my AD follow up? Annie is only good for her first rotation with the stun, so if your AD can't follow up, then there is a chance that the enemies can just turn around and kill you. Now a good way of taking their bot lane by surprise is to only have 3 stacks of your passive active. That way they're going to be less afraid, and you can actually get your stun off on the second spellcast still. The final thing I want to say is that having a flash is a game changer. Now flash ulting in a team fight is a sure way to turn the tides in your favour, and you should always try and have it ready. When you're playing against Annie though, you really need to play the cooldown game as much as possible. If she wastes her stun, then that's a good 20 seconds where she doesn't have it available and you can go aggressive. Now Annie doesn't do that much damage early, so without her stun you do have the advantage in a trade. The biggest thing that I can say is just don't feed her. I know that sounds really dumb, and it kinda is, but if you can just not give her kills, then you stand a good chance mid-game of shutting her down. The worst thing you can really do is think, I have to shut her down right now in the lane phase, and end up gifting her a couple of kills and a bunch of items. There are no real mechanics that beat Annie because she does so much damage, so you just have to play safe, pick the best opportunities to fight, and if you're not sure, just don't do it. So I just want to mention Janna and Lulu here because both are really good supports right now, but I don't think they can carry games as well as the others. Now they are both defensive supports, they don't really make plays, but they do make it really hard to kill someone. Now this is really good for competitive play, but I think that if you want to carry as a support in solo queue, then you're going to need to be the one making the plays. Both of these also rely on their AD in lane to do a lot of the work, which doesn't really fit with the current meta as well as others.